The morning we first met Karen Goodson was the last morning our land felt truly quiet. I remember the way the fog curled low between the trees like breath from some sleeping beast, the porch creaking gently under my boots as I stepped out with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Amy was already there, legs folded beneath her, eyes closed, face tilted to the rising sun. A moment frozen in peace. Birds called from the pines. Somewhere in the distance, a creek murmured like it was whispering secrets just for us. This was why we'd built the cabin. Not bought, built. Every board, every nail, every pane of glass had passed through her hands. I'd spent a year bleeding into this patch of dirt and timber, carving out a dream most people forget to chase. Amy stained the wood. I drove the nails. We sanded our lives down to the grain and sealed it with sweat and grit. That morning was supposed to be our first real day of rest. No tools, no hardware store runs. Just us and the land we'd fought to call home. Then the silence snapped like a twig. A car engine growled up the long dirt road, a sound that didn't belong. I looked up and saw her. A white Lexus, spotless as a tooth, crunching over gravel like it owned the place. Out stepped a woman dressed like a country club Barbie. Pastel pantsuit, matching heels, and a platinum helmet of hair stiff enough to repel wildlife. She marched up our driveway like she was leading a parade no one asked for, clutching a clipboard in one hand and a thick manila envelope in the other. Amy set her mug down slowly, her eyes narrowing. I stayed seated because I already knew who this was. She didn't knock, didn't greet, just stood at the bottom of our porch steps and squinted at us like we were squatters on our front lawn. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan?" she asked, though it wasn't a question. "I am Karen Goodson, president of the High Pines Homeowners Association." She said president the way some dictators say chosen by God. "We're not in your HOA," I said, calm but firm. "This land's outside your development. Always has been." She smiled. It was the kind of smile that felt like a dare. "That's what you thought." She slapped the envelope onto the porch step, the papers inside snapping like gunfire. "As of last week's board meeting, your property falls under the High Pines expansion clause. Annexed and ratified. You're now under jurisdiction of our community standards." Amy stood up slowly. I could see the storm building behind her eyes. She didn't like threats. She hated lies. "We vetted this land top to bottom," she said. "Title searches, surveys, deed restrictions. There's no HOA here." Karen's eyes glittered. "Not before, no. But the 1996 expansion map includes your parcel. You'll find the first violation notices inside. Fire pits unapproved. And this," she gestured at the dense pines, "is a non-compliant natural overgrowth. Per our guidelines, at least 40% must be cleared to maintain park-like symmetry." I laughed loud and sharp. "You want me to cut down my forest? To match your fake park?" She didn't flinch. "You have 30 days to comply, or the fines begin." Then, as if she just told us where to find the good blueberries, she turned and walked away. Back to her white Lexus. Back to her world of hedges and HOA handbooks. Amy and I didn't speak for a long moment. The birds had stopped singing. Even the wind felt quieter. "She's bluffing," I said, though it didn't feel true. Amy picked up the envelope like it was radioactive, peeled it open, and skimmed the first page. Her face went hard. "She's not bluffing," she whispered. "She's declaring war." And just like that, the quiet life we had built with bare hands and wild hope was under siege. 3 days later, a deputy knocked on our door. He looked young, too young to carry a badge and a sidearm. But his posture was stiff, and he held a cream-colored envelope like it might bite. "I'm just delivering," he said, eyes apologetic. "Don't shoot the messenger." Amy took the envelope. She didn't open it right away. Just stare at the bold serif letters stamped across the top. High Pines Homeowners Association. Notice of civil action. My chest tightened. Amy opened it at the kitchen table, carefully peeling back the wax seal like she was disarming a bomb. Inside, 48 pages of legal sludge. Threats wrapped in legalese, citations of bylaws we didn't belong to, and a formal demand to pay 5 years of back dues for an HOA we were never part of. $9,000. Due in 30 days. Or else. Amy's hands trembled as she turned the pages. I could see the lawyer in her clicking into gear, calculating, scanning for cracks, but I could also see something else beneath it. Fear. Not the kind that makes you scream. The kind that makes you cold. Heavy. Like your world's shifting under your feet. This is fraud, I said. You know that, right? She nodded. It feels like fraud, but feelings don't win in court. Paper does. My instinct was fire. I wanted to drive straight down to that pastel hellhole, drag Karen out of whatever boardroom throne she perched on, and shove this lawsuit down her throat. But Amy, as always, was the steadying hand. She wants that, she said. She wants you angry and reckless. She's setting traps. This entire thing is calculated. That night, the wind whistled through the trees louder than usual. I couldn't sleep. Neither could Amy. We sat on the couch. The lawsuit spread out between us like a map of a battlefield we hadn't chosen, but now couldn't walk away from. She's counting on us folding, I said. Selling. Moving. Giving up. Amy didn't answer. She was scanning the map Karen included in the packet, a community expansion document dated 1996. It showed a red line drawn neatly around our property like a noose. Funny, Amy muttered. This map is new, like laser-printed new. And that signature. She pointed to the bottom. It's just hers. Can they do that? I asked. Just redraw a boundary and force you inside? She didn't look up. Only if no one challenges it. The next morning, she went to town with a messenger bag full of legal pads and a folder marked property records. High Pines/Callahan parcel. Her mission? Find the paper trail. The real one. While she dug into history, I fortified the present. I installed motion-sensing floodlights, wired up a network of trail cameras, and dusted off some old knowledge from my commercial security days. I wasn't building a house anymore. I was building a fortress. Because something in Karen's eyes that day, something gleeful and hungry, told me this wasn't just about money or bylaws. It was about control. She wanted to break us, make us submit. But she hadn't counted on who we were. I didn't grow up with much. Our apartment in the city had one window, and the view was another wall. The only green thing I saw most days was mold on the bathroom tiles. So when I finally clawed my way to this life, our life, I swore no one would ever take it from me. Not banks, not storms, not bureaucrats in cardigans with too much time on their hands. And sure as hell not Karen Goodson. That night, Amy returned with a stack of files and a face carved from stone. There's something off, she said, laying out photocopies like tarot cards. The 1996 expansion map is on file at the county, but the documentation around it, it's sloppy. Missing stamps. No minutes from a meeting it supposedly came from. Could it be fake? I asked. Her eyes flicked up. It feels fake, but I need proof. We were no longer just homeowners. We were detectives, digging into a con that ran deeper than we thought. And as I watched Amy work under the lamplight, her mind sharp, her eyes blazing, I realized something. Karen had picked the wrong target. Because the woman in front of me wasn't just my wife. She was a lawyer's worst nightmare with a cause worth fighting for. And she just found her teeth. The drone appeared 3 days after Amy flagged the county's records as suspicious. At first, it was just a faint buzzing, high constant, unnatural. I stepped out onto the porch, and there it was, a sleek white drone hovering just above the tree line, its tiny lens trained directly on our cabin like a sniper scope. Amy joined me, her garden gloves still on. Her face went still. Karen, she said, not a question. It zipped back and forth in smooth arcs, recording every inch of our home. I didn't wave this time. I didn't move. I just stared at it until it pulled back and vanished into the canopy. An hour later, a pink envelope showed up in our mailbox. Violation notice number 4, unauthorized use of non-regulation exterior materials. They meant the cedar siding I had hand-milled from fallen trees. They called it non-conforming. I called it mine. That night, Amy couldn't sleep. She sat in bed with her laptop balanced on her knees, papers spread out like puzzle pieces across the quilt. I think I found something, she said, voice low. I sat up, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Something as in... She turned the screen toward me. A map of High Pines appeared, clean, symmetrical, perfectly boxed in. But Amy had added something, red dots. Dozens of them. Every one of these is a property Karen's real estate company has flipped in the last 2 years, she said. And look where they are. She drew a circle. It traced neatly around every red dot, including our land. She's not just expanding the HOA, Amy whispered. She's targeting properties. Ones she or her friends can buy cheap, annex into the HOA, and sell high. I stared at the screen, the pieces snapping into place like falling dominoes. She's using the HOA as a weapon, I said. Amy nodded, and we're in the blast radius. It wasn't just harassment. It wasn't just power. It was a real estate scam. A con. She weaponized bylaws, rewrote boundaries, bullied homeowners until they cracked, then swooped in to buy the land for pennies. Once annexed, the value soared. She profited. The community paid the price. We had been her next domino, and we hadn't fallen. I need to talk to someone, I said. The man who sold us this land. Mr. Abernathy. He was in his 90s now, living quietly in a care home one town over. When I found him, he was in a sunroom, reading a thick book on Appalachian history. Mr. Abernathy? I asked. He looked up. His eyes, pale and sharp, met mine. You're the boy who built the cedar cabin. I nodded. And we've got trouble. He listened quietly as I laid it all out. The violations. The lawsuit. The 1996 map. When I finished, his lips curled into a tight frown. That map, he said. It's a lie. He told me a story I'll never forget. Back in 1994, Abernathy had served on the original HOA board, before it was weaponized. He saw the potential for abuse and made them vote on a permanent carve-out. His land and several others were never to fall under HOA control. The agreement was notarized, the maps signed by the full board, and the documents filed in the county records. I insisted on it, he said. Didn't trust that future leaders would keep their noses out of people's lives. What happened to the original map? I asked. He smiled and reached for a key. Under my bed, locked away with the minutes of that meeting. Just in case. Amy and I sat across from him as he opened the footlocker. Inside, wrapped in wax paper, was the original 1994 development map. Real ink. Real signatures. The notary stamp still crisp. And there it was, a clean boundary line with our parcel explicitly excluded. Amy's hand went to her mouth. This is it. Mr. Abernathy looked at us both. She forged that 1996 map, didn't she? I nodded. Built her whole scheme on it. He closed the box and handed it to Amy. Then it's time someone tore it all down. I looked at her, my legal tactician, my warrior. Her eyes burned with something dangerous now. Not fear, not even anger. Purpose. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about everyone she crushed along the way. And we had just found the one weapon she couldn't spin, twist, or bury. Proof. We didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear this time, but because we had a war to plan. The 1994 map and the notarized board minutes were the kill shot, sure. But Amy was clear. We don't just want to win this. We want to end it. She spread out a roadmap of high pines on the kitchen table, overlaying it with her research. Dozens of red pins marked Karen's flipped properties. Yellow ones showed ongoing disputes. Black ones were silence. Neighbors too afraid or too exhausted to fight anymore. She's turned this place into a private fiefdom, Amy muttered. But here's the thing about tyrants. They never expect the peasants to organize. We decided to fight on 2 fronts. Legal was obvious. We'd turn the evidence over to our lawyer, prepare our case, and drop the original 1994 documents like a nuclear bomb in court. But the second front, hearts and minds, was where the real war would be won. She's built her power on fear and silence, Amy said. So we take those away. We give people the truth. We printed 50 copies of a single-page flyer. No opinions. No accusations. Just facts. Bullet-pointed, undeniable, sourced. Karen Goodson owns a real estate firm. She has flipped 14 properties in the past 2 years. Each of those properties now falls inside a newly redrawn HOA boundary. The 1996 map used to justify this expansion has only one signature, hers. A 1994 notarized map exists that proves the boundary never included those homes. It ended with a single question. Who profits when your home is annexed without your consent? We didn't sign it. We didn't have to. Derek, the eccentric neighbor from the edge of High Pines, handled the rest. He'd been watching Karen's reign with quiet disgust for years. Now he had proof. The next morning, the flyers hit mailboxes. By sundown, the neighborhood was buzzing. She's deleting posts from the online forum, Derek told us over the phone, practically giddy. But it's too late. People are talking. In their driveways. At the mailboxes. Out loud. In public. It's chaos. The panic reached Karen in waves. First, she sent out a formal HOA letter, dismissing the flyers as malicious fiction. Then she posted a community-wide video, her tone maternal, warning of outside agitators trying to sow discord. But she was unraveling. And unraveling people make mistakes. One came roaring up our driveway 2 days later in the form of a lifted black pickup truck. 2 men got out. One of them I recognized. He was the same guy who tried to paint my house beige in the middle of the night. The other was built like a bulldozer with fists. Amy was in the garden. I was splitting wood. I held the axe low at my side, not threatening, but not passive either. This is private property, I said, stepping between them and the house. You're trespassing. We're here on HOA business, the smaller one smirked. Follow-up inspection. Then go inspect your own spine, I said. Get off my land. The big one stepped forward trying to loom. But he paused when he saw Amy standing on the porch with her phone held up and recording. You've been warned, she said. Leave now or we press charges. The big guy shifted, uncertain. He wasn't here for a legal debate. He was here to intimidate. But it wasn't working. Then the smaller one snapped. He lunged for the trail camera I'd mounted on the tree. No more of your spy games, he yelled. I stepped into his path. He shoved me. Twice. And that's when the sirens cut through the woods. The sheriff's deputy, this time not the bored one, but a man with purpose, arrived in under 5 minutes. I dropped the axe before he got out. The 2 men tried to spin a story, but the footage spoke louder. Amy's phone, the camera, the bruises blooming on my forearm. The deputy arrested both on the spot. As they were led to the cruiser, I looked toward the trees. Somewhere beyond them, Karen was watching. She had sent dogs to our doorstep. And now, she knew we were biting back. But even with the arrests, I knew the real battle hadn't begun. We had the truth. We had the evidence. But we were about to walk into her kingdom, the courthouse she thought she owned. And we were going to burn her paper thrown to ash. The courtroom smelled like old books and bad coffee. Karen Goodson sat at the plaintiff's table in a powder-pink blazer so bright it felt like a challenge. Her smile was weaponized, tight, triumphant. She leaned toward her lawyer, whispering like she was already planning how to decorate the ashes of our home. She hadn't seen the folder yet. Judge Marion Stone entered without ceremony. Mid-60s, iron hair, eyes that could cut glass. She didn't care about pink suits or smug smiles. She cared about facts. Karen's attorney rose first. His name was Peterson. He looked like a soap opera senator. Expensive, slick, and overconfident. The High Pines HOA, he began, is a beacon of orderly, aesthetic living. My client, Mrs. Goodson, has tirelessly worked to uphold its values against hostile, non-compliant occupants. Amy's hand brushed mine under the table. I could feel her pulse in her fingertips, steady and strong. Peterson's voice droned on, describing our cabin like we were squatters in a palace of golf courses and cul-de-sacs. Words like unsanctioned, non-conforming, and disruptive element hit the wood-paneled walls like stones. Then Karen took the stand. Her tone was gentle, performed empathy. The victim mask snug on her face. They've refused every attempt at community dialogue, she said, her voice dripping fake sadness. All we've ever asked is compliance. Harmony. We want everyone to feel welcome, but we have standards. And then, like it was a holy relic, her lawyer unrolled the 1996 expansion map and mounted it on an easel. There it is, Your Honor, Peterson said. The official county-filed map. You'll see their parcel is clearly within the boundaries. Karen gave a practiced nod. The room went still. And then it was our turn. Our lawyer, Ben, was quiet. Measured. No flair. He stood, portfolio in hand, and nodded to the judge. We don't dispute that Mrs. Goodson has presented a map, Your Honor. What we dispute, what we will prove, is that her map is a fraud. A gasp rippled across the courtroom. Ben walked to the easel and gently placed another map beside it. Ours was older, hand-drawn, but official. Your Honor, this is the notarized 1994 development map, drawn and filed by the original High Pines Board. It shows a permanent carve-out, specifically excluding the Callahan property. It is signed by all founding board members and sealed by the county notary. Ben paused. Let the silence thicken. And this, he said, holding up a folder, is a certified transcript of the board meeting that voted to create that carve-out. A unanimous vote. On the record, Judge Stone leaned forward. Let me see that. As she examined the documents, Amy leaned over to whisper, watch Karen's hands. Her fingers twitched. Her smile faded. Her throat pulsed once, twice. Peterson blustered. That map predates the current expansion clause, the clause that your client implemented alone, with no recorded vote. Ben cut in. Filed under her own name. Signed only by her. After acquiring multiple properties just outside the original HOA boundary. He paused again. Including the one she's suing my clients for. Karen opened her mouth. No words came out. Then the final blow. Ben hit play on the video. Grainy, black and white footage from our trail camera. Her enforcers. The shoving. The threats. My hands clenched. Amy's voice, calm and firm, on the recording. And the sirens. When it ended, the courtroom was silent. Karen looked smaller now. The queen without her crown. Judge Stone removed her glasses. I've heard enough. Her voice was low. Dangerous. This court finds in favor of the defendants. The 1994 exemption stands. The plaintiff's map is hereby dismissed as fraudulent and inadmissible. Karen flinched. But Judge Stone wasn't done. This court further orders the plaintiff to personally pay all of the defendants' legal fees, repair damages to their property, and submit to an investigation for potential perjury and document forgery. Karen's mouth opened, shut again. I will also be referring this matter, the judge said, lifting the fraudulent map with 2 fingers like it was a used tissue, to the district attorney's office for immediate review. She raised the gavel. Karen whispered something. I think it was no. The gavel dropped like thunder. Crack. Case closed. And with it, her entire empire. The first thing I noticed after the trial was the silence. Not the kind that comes from absence. Not the hush after a storm. No, this was something else entirely. It was the return of a rhythm. One weed forgotten, weed lost. The creak of the porch swing. The soft clink of Amy's coffee spoon. The whisper of pine needles brushing against the cabin roof like fingers through hair. The noise was gone. And for the first time in months, peace wasn't just a hope. It was real. Karen Goodson never showed her face again. The day after the trial, she cleaned out her office in the HOA clubhouse and disappeared like a shadow at sunrise. We heard later that the state revoked her real estate license, that she was facing criminal charges for the forged map, for perjury, for fraudulent annexation. But we didn't celebrate. There was no victory parade, no vengeance dance, just 2 chairs on a porch and the quiet satisfaction of not being broken. The damage she left behind would take longer to fade. The High Pines community held emergency meetings, scrambling to undo the mess she left in her wake. People were angry. People were ashamed. Some were just tired. A few came up to the cabin in the weeks that followed. Neighbors we'd never spoken to, bringing pie, firewood, awkward apologies. You stood up, they said, when the rest of us didn't. I didn't know what to say to that. We hadn't done it for them. Not at first. We just wanted to be left alone. But somewhere between the drone and the forged map and the fists in our driveway, we stopped defending ourselves and started defending something bigger. We didn't just fight to keep our cabin. We fought for the right to not be ruled. One afternoon, Derek came by, holding a garden gnome like it was a trophy. She's gone, he said, placing the gnome in our front flower bed with a kind of reverence. Let the rebellion begin. Amy laughed for the first time in a while. A real one. I don't think I'd realized until then how much weight she'd been carrying. All the legal research, all the strategy, all the quiet fury. She had been our sword, our shield, our compass. And now, she finally set them down. We rebuilt slowly. I replaced the beige paint on the cabin's siding with fresh cedar boards. hand-oiled until they gleamed in the morning light. We res-tacked the firewood. Amy replanted her garden. For the first time since the pink envelope arrived, her hands were in soil again, not paper. And one morning, I found her standing barefoot in the dew-soaked grass, staring out the woods. I joined her. "You miss the city?" I asked. She shook her head. "I miss what I thought it was. But this feels earned." I knew what she meant. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks or flags. It feels like this, bare feet in soft grass, no one watching, no one judging, no one trying to fold your life into theirs. Later that week, we drove back to the nursing home and gave Mr. Abernathy a copy of the court ruling. He didn't say much, just nodded once, slow and proud, and said, "Good. Let the trees grow tall." We left him with his feet propped up, his eyes on the window, watching the wind roll over the hills he once called his own. Some days, I still catch myself bracing for a knock at the door. A drone. A letter. Old habits die hard when you've had to defend your life with trail cameras and court exhibits. But always passes, because now we know something we didn't before. The quiet isn't fragile. It's earned, and it's defended. And if someone tries to take it again, they'll find out the same thing Karen did. Some fences aren't just boundaries. Some fences bite back. The last light of the day slants through the trees as Amy and I sit on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the pines whisper to one another. Somewhere beyond the ridgeline, a hawk cries. I look at her. She smiles. And in that moment, I realize the truth. She wasn't just the reason we won. She's the reason we stayed unbroken. Not because she fought harder, because she knew what we were fighting for. And in the end, it wasn't just about land or lawsuits. It was about not folding. It was about standing your ground, even when the ground shakes. It was about finding the line and refusing to back away from it. We never asked for war. But when it came, we didn't run. We held the line, and we built our home on it.